Good morning, everyone. Jim Laird joining you from, well, not essentially Grand Pacifica, Nicaragua, but just outside the gate of Grand Pacifica, there's a restaurant here called Alice's. It's actually Kelly's store, which Alice is a little girl that runs around and uh, is just hilarious. And so they named the restaurant after her. She's a little girl. She's still in diapers. But this is kind of a local hangout. My internet at my place is not working. So I didn't want to go to the regular restaurant because it's a little busy today. So they don't really open up here till around noon. So they have a store as well. I buy a lot of my groceries here, and they do a really good job. The staff's great. So here we are. So yesterday, Dr. Stillman and I had a really great discussion about mind-body medicine. It was wonderful. We had about 100 people that signed up. So if you're not one of those people that were on, get on the email list so you can get on. Their next discussion next week, I believe, is on allergies, allergies, stealth infections, something along those lines. But get on the email list. There'll be an email sent out Wednesday nights where you can register for the webinar, and you'll be able to participate on that. And this isn't a sales webinar. This is just a straight up rewarding you for being on our email list. We really appreciate your support. So this morning's been an adventure. It was actually cold this morning. It felt like it was 55, 60 degrees before the sun came up. And I was talking to my housekeeper about it, and she was like, Moto, freezing, So for her, it might have been 70, but it felt like 55. But, she's driving a motorcycle and she's doing 30, 40 miles an hour. That minus is about 30 degrees. So she's getting down, for her, that's probably the coldest she's ever been in her life. So pretty interesting. She says she described having frostbite on her hands. So pretty interesting. But my next door neighbor's from Canada, and we were talking, and he was like, man, it's like I've never felt it this cold here in 2 years. So who knows? We've got all sorts of fun things that are happening and weird stuff going on around the world. So we could talk about that, but we'll focus on things that are more in our control. So how to build resilience in yourself. Now, I think there's a lot of confusion between learning how to suffer and building resiliency. Resiliency to me involves an increase in performance. Okay. Suffering through pain and injury and just doing difficult things at a moderate to low level. Sure, there's a time for that. Like if Baton Death March, you got to go 200 miles, or you're going to starve to death, or you're going to, emergency situations, that's where mental fortitude comes in. That's where faith comes in, and being in a good place, and then challenge yourself with difficult things from time to time. But if you want to be a high performer that can handle multiple different scenarios, self-care is so important, because there's a lot of people in this space that'll be like, well, just do more and more difficult things. And you could be tough as nails and you could be incredibly good at suffering, but at what level are you actually performing that task? I mean, you're running with broken legs. Are you really going to be that effective, right? Is it great that you can run with broken legs? That's awesome. Good for you. Knock yourself out. Not my idea of a good time unless I really have to. That's not something I'm going to choose to do. Now, I challenge myself. I mean, yesterday I climbed a bunch of trees and hanging on trees, which is not in my wheelhouse. So I try to challenge myself with different things. I just about got sucked out in the ocean and never returned a couple weeks ago. So I challenge myself with difficult things, but I try and do it so that it's difficult, but it also doesn't absolutely wreck me. So the key with this stuff, with resiliency, with building capacity, is challenging your body enough to get it to improve so that you adapt, but not so much that you wreck somebody. that you take them into an emergency. Like Mel Siff had this great quote, any moron can basically destroy someone in an exercise program. It takes great skill to develop somebody over years and years and years. And Chris Summer and I talked about this a lot in our interview. It's that low to mid-level intensity, consistency over years and years and years with sprinkled in designed intensity. And that's where, in our modern world, most people don't spend enough time focusing on the food, the sleep, the getting outside, being an overall healthy human. The healthier you are, the more resilient you're going to be, the more you're going to have the ability to step up when you need to. And that's why, the powers that be are doing everything they can, whether it's, encouraging people to eat less meat, getting people to be inside more, all these things that they're doing, the less healthy the organism, the more controllable it's going to be. So the lower your testosterone is, the lower your hormone profile is, the higher your stress rate, the more, the less protein you eat, the less sleep you get because your circadian rhythm is busted. One, you're going to be more compliant and you're not going to have the willpower or the will to stand up and fight if you need to. So in our modern world, you need to focus on, like the warrior needs not only time in training to fight, but also needs time away from fighting to rest and the balance of everything. Paul Chek talks about this a lot, the yin and the yang and the working in versus the working out. And we've taken that away. We've taken that balance away. And it's so important for you to challenge yourself with difficult things, but it's so important for you to put yourself first and to have the discipline. And that really builds resiliency, is have the discipline to get up every morning and go for a long walk by yourself. The discipline to do all the manual labor activities. If you want to be a high performer, you're going to have to do some low level activity. Like you look at guys like, Kobe Bryant and all these athletes, the hours they spend in the gym shooting free throws, the hours they spend in the gym, crossing over, double, doing all the things they need to do. And if you don't want to be like a super high performer like that, you really don't. You do a couple hours a day where they're just moving around. Like even now, like, when I'm doing this, after I get off this call, I'm going to get up and move around. I'm going to cross connect. And I have decades of training and playing sports under my belt. So it doesn't really take that much for me to stay where I am. Once you get yourself to a certain level, it's really easy to stay there, right? So the whole point of this is like, don't just get good at suffering. Challenge yourself from time to time, but get good. Make sure that if you do difficult things, you're working on increasing your ability to handle those difficult things with more efficiency, and your performance is a high level, right? You're not just like barely walking down the street because both your legs are broken and your feet are bleeding, right? You should be able, focusing on walking at a fast rate or high quality rate for long periods of time, or building up, if you need to build your endurance, you're doing enough work to challenge yourself to build that endurance, or you're adding a light sled or a lightweight vest to make it more challenging with less volume, right? I would do sled dragging for people that had to do a lot of distance running, or so things along those lines. So how are you? So, it's one of those things where, are you getting good at suffering, or are you actually getting better at a skill that makes you more adaptable? So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you get outside today. No worries. It's all good. It's a live show. That's why it's fun. Make sure you get outside today. You deserve it. And focus on, building the habits that are going to make you more resilient. Getting outside, eating a protein at every meal, getting the lights off at night, the sleep. All these things are going to make you more resilient so you can handle more stress. And then part of the resiliency factor is finding ways to be more efficient so you can get more done with less effort. So Take care. Have a great day. Have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget to get outside.